I don't know if they had a historian on the show guiding them, but they really should have hired one. They should have hired me. Hello and welcome back to another video. For those who don't know, I'm Hilly and I'm a historian who specializes in Ottoman and medieval Turkish and Islamic history. So today I'm going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time, and that is rating the costumes in a historical or period drama that is called Muhtesem Yüzyil, or as it's known in English, The Magnificent Century. The TV show, I think it runs for about 4 seasons, and it focuses on the reign of Sultan Süleyman I, who reigned from 1520 to 1566. The main storyline is actually the love, the romance between him and his concubine turned wife, Hürrem. The show was extremely popular all around the world as far as Latin America, and when you watch it you can understand why. It has a great cast, great storyline, keeps you on your toes. That being said, I have a bone to pick with the costume design. I'm talking past Bridgerton. This is rain level bad. We could make the excuse that it was 4 seasons, the costume designers had their work cut out for them. Also, film and TV productions have budget and time constraints, which stop them from accurately depicting every single little stitch. And to be honest, they know that most viewers, especially Turkish viewers, don't really care how accurate the costumes are. And you yourself may be thinking, why does it matter? It's just a costume. You know, doesn't the plot matter more? Doesn't the cast matter more? Well, there are a few things that accurate historical costuming does. One is that it teaches in a very powerful way, which is visually. Most people would rather watch a TV show about history than read a book about it. Visual media, TV, films, they present this really important opportunity to teach people about history. Another thing which it does, which is probably more important for the show itself, is that it sets the historical tone and the setting, the context. Depicting the correct fashion is just as important as depicting the correct vehicles, the correct technology, weaponry, music. If you're making a film about the 50s and you've got a person on a computer using the internet, it's going to create some mental confusion for the viewer because they know that these things weren't widely used until the 90s. So how can historical costume design be accurately depicted? So I would argue that there are 3 basic elements. The first one is the silhouette. If you don't get the shape properly, it's like not getting the foundation properly. The second would be through the correct fabrics, the correct colors, and the third would be through the right accessories. In this video, I'm going to focus on the first 2, so the silhouette and the fabrics. Let's get down to business and look at some of these costumes. If I'm looking down, it's because my screen is down here. These are from early on in the series, which is set in the 1520s. I mean, were they trying to be as inaccurate as possible? Because if they were, they've done a great job. There's a lot of cleavage in these dresses. They are tight, they have underbusts. Some of them have princess busts. These are things which didn't even exist at that time. There are a lot of elongated sleeves, kind of medieval princessy costume type of sleeves. I think I know what's happened here. It seems like the costume designers have just made a beeline towards 18th century Ottoman clothing. And the reason for this is probably because it is the earliest period from which we have the most depictions of women in their everyday lives. So the costumes in the show are very reminiscent of Levni's miniatures. Levni was an Ottoman court painter in the 1700s. A lot of his miniatures give a more detailed view of the fabrics, of sleeves, of the busts, basically of the construction of gowns. Women's clothing in the 1500s was much more modest, much more plain. There was 0 cleavage being shown. 0. Sleeves were much shorter and tighter. The silhouettes of women's kaftans in the 16th century were long, rectangular, boxy. This was actually connected to the political and social history of the time. The Ottomans loved to use luxurious fabrics like silk and brocade. And a lot of these fabrics came from eastern lands like China and Persia. The Ottomans were in this rivalry with Venetians and Persians to control the Silk Road and other trade routes through which these fabrics would come. And occasionally they would have wars that would affect the trade of these fabrics. So they were very valuable commodities. And this is one of the main reasons why kaftans, which were the main garment that the Ottomans were wearing, were cut in this kind of very long rectangular shape. However, many of the show's costumes consist of these small pieces that have been cut and sewn together. There's even an occasional hole in the middle of a dress, something that the Ottomans couldn't even imagine. at that time. All of the kaftans that have been preserved from the 16th century and the portraiture, the descriptions, travelers' tales, these primary sources all tell us that kaftans had high necklines and that they were very loose fitting. But just when I thought, it couldn't get any worse, this monstrosity pops up. So this is supposed to be Hafsa Sultan, the Queen Mother. This just screams Mother of the Bride gown from a 2005 magazine. It's actually insulting to the intelligence of the viewer who can just find it on Google like I have. Not only is it very jarring in the context of the scene, we know it's the 1530s, why is she wearing something from 2005? But it also makes it hard for us as viewers to connect to the history component of the story, to connect to the storyline. The way I see it, she wouldn't get into a cab instead of a horse and carriage. So why would she be wearing a dress like this? I'm not saying that the designers should build a 16th century loom and start weaving the fabrics the way that they did, but there has to be some kind of realism added into there. So there's also a huge problem with textiles. The fabrics in the show are very plasticky. They're polyester, you can just tell. There's a lot of silk chiffon, a lot of lace being used, even though silk chiffon didn't enter Europe until 1700s. So again, they're going for this kind of fantasy medieval element for some reason. They could have used taffeta, brocade, real silk, velvet. These were very popular during that time. And a lot of the fabrics have this kind of weird metallic sheen on them. I guess they did that to make it look luxurious. Instead, why not use a technique like serasar, which has metallic like gold and silver threads through the weft. This would give it a kind of beautiful goldy silvery sheen, not any of this like plastic metallic. There are also very bright colors being used, colors like mauve, which didn't exist until the 1800s. I like that some of the fabrics have incorporated motifs, like floral motifs, but a lot of the fabric that we see in the show is just like plain straight fabric. It's more machine-made 21st century fabrics. The Ottomans loved to use motifs on their fabrics because it was a sign of social status. Motifs like chintamani, lotuses, pomegranates, curved leaves, vines, these were very time-consuming to make because an artist had to draw them and then it would be manually applied to the loom. The average person did not have such fabrics. They might have had colored fabrics. Motifs on fabrics were left to the upper classes. So they could have definitely used this element more. The clothing is very ornamental. There are so many elements. There's like trimming, there's lace, there are patches, there's like patches of fabric. These elements weren't used until the 18th century, and that's because Ottoman tailors and women in the court started to liaise with tailors outside of the court who had access to Baroque fashion, the styles coming from Europe and the French court. Whereas in the 16th century, they were much more focused on the fabric type. The silhouette really wasn't anything special. It was the fabric that you were wearing that was the most important thing. Dress in the 1500s reflected the kind of no-nonsense, practical kind of Ottoman mentality. Whereas in the 1700s, especially during the tulip period, it was a time of leisure and wealth. And the long sleeves reflect that because the longer your sleeves, the less that you are doing. And the more fabric that you have to waste on something like unnecessary, like a really long sleeve. It's kind of unacceptable that I have a literal bookmark that is more accurate than any costume in this whole show. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop roasting them here because this video will literally never end. This was just like a quick review. I can definitely go more in depth, so I think I might turn this into a series because I haven't talked about the men's costumes, I haven't talked about the accessories, I haven't talked about the lower classes. There is a lot to unpack. It's important to do this because more awareness will create more pressure so that they start depicting history more accurately, which is like my life goal, like as a historian. I'm invested in it. But yeah, comment down below if you'd like to see like a series or another video like this. There are also other Turkish TV shows which I intend on roasting in the future, and I will. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video of me thinking I can do better than the entire TV production.